Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a fun day I had today. Got up bright and early. Email from a crazy, I'm not going to call him a listener, but I got a crazy email. And I got to start with this because this is one of these moments where you just go, folks, the victimhood, the level of victimhood in this country, the level of entitlement, the level of I'm special, and the level of lack of responsibility, the lack of, it's just, I got this email that, and it's, evidently this guy back in 2007, let me read the email. In 2007, he gives his name, and I'm not getting into this ball. I'm not going to get into his name, was arrested and imprisoned in North Carolina, USA, because of my belief in God. Got my attention. Oh my goodness. North Carolina, they're locking up Christians. Oh my goodness. Now I assumed Christians because it was an American sounding name. An entitled name, one of those with three names. He says, I was charged with two counts of felony child abuse for circumcising my two sons. Now, I stopped right there because I'm going, one of two ways this goes. And none of them good. And I'm going, explain? So he goes on, he says he was charged with other things to make him look violent. And so I stopped right there and I'm going, wait a second, I gotta look this up. So I spent a little time reading all of the stories that I could find from back in 2008 of this guy being arrested for circumcising his two children with a box cutter. Yeah, I didn't stutter. Circumcised his two 8-day-old sons, or an 8-day-old son and one a couple of months older, I guess, with a freaking box cutter. And you go, so explain this whole God thing. Where's God come into this? Did God tell you to use the box cutter? Did God, send Moses down? Thou shalt box cut your son's willy. I mean, is this it? So then he goes on to this whole level of, I was abused and I was tortured and I was mistreated and they put me in jail and they did all this stuff. And I'm going, good. I'm glad they put you in jail. We need to get people who take box cutters, to circumcise their children. Now, again, this is this level of, wow. Now, I don't know why he would come to me. Why you think this program would be a place that you would find a sympathetic ear to circumcising your child with a box cutter, well beyond me. I would assume this would be something for Ben Shapiro, for Sean Hannity, Alex Jones, maybe, that kind of stuff. But me? Okay. But it got me to thinking today. I mean, it was one, who circumcises their child with a box cutter? Who thinks that that's okay? And look, as I read through the story, here's a guy 32 years old, got 14 kids, 14 kids. 11 of them by two women that he was just a whole, and it's all based on, I'm special and my religious beliefs and all of this stuff. And this is, as I was reading more, I'm going, this guy probably didn't belong in jail, belongs in a mental health facility. We give so much deference and so much leeway to people who claim they believe in God and they're special because God told them to do things. And I'm going, why doesn't God ever tell them to do good things? Why didn't God tell this guy, hey, love your kids and feed them and take care of them and raise them with good self-esteem and raise them to be, responsible, citizens who want to do well by society? How come that never is what they scream out as what God told them to do? But this is one of these things where you go, mental health treatment is something most certainly needed. And, as I was going through this and I'm thinking through this whole story, and it just gets one bit crazier after another. It's like a mass across this country of this kind of thinking, that their beliefs, that their narrow, twisted, bizarre idiocy is somehow normal and the rest of everyone else is screwed up. And this is where I'm hoping at some point we have an honest conversation about reining some of this stuff in, and the victimhood. I've talked about Trump for a while, saying, look, he's the result of bad parenting. This is bad parenting. But we do need to reclaim our society in a certain way. And that way of ensuring that laws are followed, that people are held accountable. And I guess I'm still stuck on the fact that this guy feels like he's the victim. Never mind the 2 children that he mutilated. Never mind that. And he could have easily gone to a doctor and had that done. So my mind then goes, well, of course, why would he go to a doctor? He's an expert. Because we've belittled intelligence. We've belittled, capability. We've belittled all of this stuff to the point where, I watched, Doogie Howser, MD on TV. I'm as good as any doctor with a scalpel and a box cutter. And, look, that wasn't, while that was the craziest email, I got a bunch of people saying, well, you were unfair to Joe Rogan and unfair to RFK Jr. No. This is where intelligence matters. This is where right and wrong matters. There is no gray area. I'm sorry, there is no gray area with taking a box cutter to your son's junk. There's just not. You just don't do it. There's no place. There's no platforming that. I am not bringing this guy on. I would never bring this guy on. But he wanted space. He wanted to be able to make his case on why he should be able to circumcise his child at home with a box cutter. Yeah. And I look at it as the same as, this thing with Professor Hotez and RFK Jr. You've got this professor who has all of this knowledge, all of this study, all of this understanding, all of this. And then you got the guy going, no. Just insane. Now, I got one of the emails, parroted something I've seen before. And it said, Rick, just because Dr. Peter Hotez has all these letters behind his name doesn't mean he's right. Yeah, it kind of does. It kind of means that he's the guy who knows. And this belittling of intelligence has gotten us into this position to where we don't listen to smart people anymore. Now, look, have they betrayed our trust in some places? Yeah, the moneyed interests have figured out how to prostitute that. And that's on them. But still, intelligence does matter. And that's the weird thing. Because look, if people with credentials said box cutter boy is a criminal, and I agree with them, should we platform box cutter boy to be able to make his case? I think box cutting is that's good American values. It's crazy. It's crazy that we would do this. Now, here's the weird thing. I look at the world we're in, and I'm going back to terrible parenting. This guy not going to be father of the year at any point, and Trump being the ultimate and exhibit A for bad parenting of never telling your children no. He's now for the first time finally being held accountable for something. Someone's finally saying, you've gone too far. You've done too much. You've broken too many laws. You've taken too many liberties. And he doesn't know how to act. The guy literally cannot shut his mouth. And yesterday, as we talked about on the program, he admitted he did exactly what he is charged with. Now, there is no defense now. You did it. You did exactly what you're charged with doing. You took the documents. Now, your defense is total BS. Very childish and very spoiled rotten, but it's BS. The defense of, well, it was in boxes, and my stuff was in those boxes, and my stuff, I had to go through my stuff to get my stuff because my stuff's more important because it's mine. You get a 2-year-old kind of vibe there where this guy was stunted at 2 years old. Mine, me, mine, me, mine. Now he's guilty. He admitted it. And this is one of those moments where you go, how did it take this long to hold somebody like this accountable? Look, even our FBI, there's just a couple of stories came out at the time, the Washington Times and the Washington Post and the New York Times. Both said the FBI did everything. The Department of Justice did everything they could possibly do. Backflips, somersaults, cartwheels. They did everything. Kid gloves. They did everything they could do to get their stuff back, to keep Trump from this point. They did everything to save Trump from himself. And they couldn't do it. And this is one of these moments where the entitled get whatever they want, however they want, whenever they want, and no one ever holds them accountable. And, it was one of these things that, I was talking to my producer today, and we were talking about, this kind of entitlement, this sense that, it's me, I'm the king, I'm the top, I'm the most important one. And we were talking about, just sports, because we're both sports guys. And I was remembering a long time ago, I was married years and years ago. My first wife was brilliant. I had a really big name job, worked for a big name company. And, I'm just a truck driver. But, the guys in the facility would get together and play basketball. So they invited me to play one weekend. One weekend. Did I mention it was one weekend I was invited to play? And I knew it was a setup going in because, I'm the union guy and there was a union in that plant that they hated. So it was gonna, let's beat up on the union guy thing. So they made me guard the boss, the big boss who was a terrible basketball player. Let me just put that on the record, but fouled like crazy. And anytime you would touch him, we'd call a foul. He was just the biggest crybaby, but nobody ever stood up to him. Well, that is until the one time when they invited the union guy to come, and I got tired of him knocking me around for no reason and then, calling fouls. So I went up for a rebound once and I came down, elbowed him on the top of the head and knocked him pretty much out. And it was that moment, the first time. And what was great is everybody, all of the players, all the people that work for him are stunned. They're standing around going, oh my God, what do we do? Had no clue what to do. No idea how now to handle this new brave world of the guy who has been a thorn in their side every day for years and years, finally flat on his back. And I said, oops, sorry, buddy. You need a hand up, a little slap on the cheek. But the people around him didn't know how to respond. And this is what happens when you allow these elites. Look, they tried to get Trump out of his own way. They tried to allow him to save face. They tried, just like those guys playing on the basketball team. They tried to play within the rules of the game while still making him special. Letting him go in for layups uncontested, leaving him open to miss a shot every once in a while without boxing him out hard. Any of that stuff, because he was special. And I got to tell you, I don't believe in any of that. And this is why I'm frustrated in this moment where the DOJ and the FBI, while Republicans are saying, oh, you weaponized all this, took that long to hold that guy accountable. So we got a lot of work to do on cleaning this mess up. But I got to tell you, a weird day to start. But I got lots to talk about today, lots to get to. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
You know, again, I come back to this, and you know the level of crybabiness. I mean, look at the whining and the complaining that we get from Republicans on finally holding him accountable. Finally, someone saying, no, Donnie, you can't have it all. No. Quite remarkable. Let's quick go to the phones. Got Alice on one. Alice, what's on your mind?
What I wanted to say is this. I am so sick and tired of this willful ignorance that goes on. Because the right wing in particular, of course, there's the left wing with the New Agers and the whatnots, but it's willful ignorance, and they're proud of their ignorance.
That's the scary part of it. It's that you know, we don't know. It was the George. I mean, Bush brought this on. I remember people going, you know, he's stupid like me, and it just going, okay. I tend to want people a lot smarter than me in the White House, but if that's where your important level is, then yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, and you know, I think a lot of it is when you have people that are capable of using reasoning and critical thinking skills, then they tend to go, wait a minute, you're kind of screwing us over here. So the religious right doesn't want that, and neither do the wealthy. They don't want it either. But, you know, it's just pathetic to see how we have dropped worldwide when it comes to, you know, intelligence. And I keep up on this all the time. And because, you know, I told you I have a degree in psychology and in sociology. And we've dropped in the United States a grand total of 20 IQ points in the last 30 years.
And what's the reason for that? Is it the RFK saying that there's radio waves, it's Wi-Fi, it's got the blood-brain barrier? What's the reason for that?
Well, there are a number of things. Number one, there is a genetic component to intelligence, and it generally is passed down through the maternal line. But then you also have things that come into play, like environmental factors and pollutants, you know, things that are in the air or in the food. So there's a number of different things that play into the intelligence. Yeah. But then you also have these people going, well, you don't need to go to college and you don't need to go to school. All you need to do is learn how to read and write and do a little bit of arithmetic, which is basically what they did in you know, the late Middle Ages, where as long as they knew how to sign their name and read a little bit of contracts and figure out how much money they had, they were fine. Yeah. But there you have it.
Appreciate the call, Alice. Thanks so much. No, I mean, you know, this is the sad reality, and at some point we've got to figure out how we turn this train around, because not good for democracy. I mean, really, when the elites have this kind of power that they can manipulate, I'm I'm amazed every day when I have a Trump supporter reach out to me and go, I can't believe you don't support Donald. He's being abused. No, he's not being abused. He broke the law. He has broken the law. He's admitted to it. Oh, where do we go? Where do we go? Good news coming out of the Pennsylvania State House of Representatives this hour. The Pennsylvania House has passed a minimum wage increase, going to boost the minimum wage here in Pennsylvania up to $15 an hour by 2026. They say that the first boost will be from $7.25, which it is currently now, up to $11 an hour in 2024, $13 an hour by 25, and $15 by 26. They are also boosting the tipped minimum wage to be 60% of the minimum, and also it will be indexed to inflation. Now, don't get all excited because it's not going to pass. Don't get all happy and proud. Not going to pass because the Senate is still run by Republicans, and they are dead set against it, it appears. This is one of these things where you just go, elections matter. Let's quick go to the phone. Who do we got on the line, and what's on your mind? Hey, Mark.
It's Mark from Wisconsin.
What's on your mind, Mark?
I saw a sign up at the local Culver's here in Wisconsin that in Sauk City, the phone where Culver's came from, $19 an hour for adult workers that they're offering now. That this is Culver's place is a place that sells burgers and
that's great.
Great milkshakes and custard milkshake. So I mean that wages have got to go up, and I mean that it's just here in Wisconsin, it's still at $7.25 an hour is the minimum wage, and it's the reticence to increase wages is just sad here, but great for Pennsylvania there, but it should have happened a hell of a lot sooner.
I agree with you. Last time we raised the minimum wage in Pennsylvania was 2006. They raised it to $7.15, and it hasn't been raised in this state since. The federal went up in 2009 to $7.25. But again, we are the poorest state in all the ones that surround us. West Virginia has a higher minimum wage than Pennsylvania. And the thing is what they're saying, Mark, is if we raise the minimum wage, we're not going to be able to find anybody. And as you pointed out, you've got Culver's, which I love Culver's, by the way. They're paying above that. So why can't we boost the floor to make sure that everyone gets a bump up?
And they don't seem to understand that you raise the minimum wage, you raise what the working class are have available to spend. They spend that money. They spend it and boost the economy. So it's a huge boost to the economy if people are making more money. That's what happened during the 50s. I mean, when that when it kind of started after the post-war Second World War. I mean that when unions are out there big and strong, and then tax rates were high, but the economy boomed.
Yep.
And that and maybe we should take a lesson from the past, but I don't think we have the people, our current crop of politicians, especially on the right, have the wisdom to even see that.
No, they don't. And that's why we, the working people of this country, have got to stop dividing ourselves over these idiotic issues and get back to what's really important, that kitchen table economic stuff, how we put food on our table, keep a roof over our kids' head. To me, that's what we've got to do. Put down the red hats and the blue hats, get that hard hat back on, and rebuild this country.
Right you are, brother. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it. Now, look, they passed it in the House here in Pennsylvania. And Republicans immediately are, we're going to lose jobs. It's crazy. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1941. That was the day Ford Motor Company finally signed with the United Auto Workers. Ford was the last of the big three to sign with the UAW. The hard-won victory came after nearly 3 decades of struggle to organize there. Anyone attempting to build a union had been met with the full force of Ford's service department, led by thug Harry Bennett. Intimidation, Jew baiting, red baiting, firings, and beatings were common in the years leading up to unionization. Some unionists had even been murdered. The company finally caved after a solid strike shut down production at the massive River Rouge complex in April. Several union committee members had been fired, and the UAW called a strike in their defense. Tens of thousands of black and white workers poured out of their departments to join the picket lines. They blocked all plant gates with their cars. Strike bulletins, press statements, and radio broadcasts kept workers updated on the latest decisions. A week into the strike, the NLRB ruled an election be held within 45 days. Strikers went back to work on guarantees that their co-workers would be reinstated. The following month, the UAW won union certification after 60,000 rallied in Detroit's Cadillac Square in support. When Ford finally signed the first contract, it guaranteed competitive wages, a closed shop, and dues checkoff. The first contract also ensured seniority rights, grievance procedures, and pensions. The union immediately took advantage of the contract clause that prohibited racial discrimination. They set up a commission to combat racism on the shop floor, issuing anti-racist literature and backing the elections of black committeemen and stewards. Labor historian Steve Babson notes, it was a watershed in American history.
Years ago, a Texas lawmaker got caught using his official position to enrich himself by taking money from special interests in exchange for voting their way. The culprit did not deem this as corrupt, but just the normal ethic of an enterprising business transaction. "I seen my chances," he explained, "and I took 'em." This is the Clarence Thomas Code of Ethics. As has been widely reported, this Supreme Court judge, who reliably rules for corporate supremacy over the people's interests, has secretly been on the take for years from a billionaire corporate right-winger. Real estate tycoon Harlan Crow, an extremist activist for plutocratic government, has been lavishing millions of dollars worth of luxury vacations, private jet travel, family housing, and educational payments, and other gratuities on Thomas. Yet, this supposedly supreme lawyer says he detected no whiff of bribery, nor did he see any need to inform us commoners of it. He simply seen his chances and took 'em. But Thomas knew damn well that it was improper, corrupting, and disgusting. After all, during the last 3 decades, he has consistently voted for court rulings to make such obvious graft legal. For example, he's voted again and again to drain common sense from our anti-corruption laws, declaring that it is legal for a corporation to keep a public official on private retainer, that it's okay for political officials to sell access to their offices, that the appearance of corruption is not corrupt, and directly relevant to Harlan Crow, Thomas voted that it is technically not bribery to try influencing public officials by bestowing a series of gifts to them over time. This is Jim Hightower saying, if it seems to you like the system is rigged to favor the powerful, there you have it. Clarence Thomas is both the rigger and the beneficiary of the system.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So got an email from Jennifer who agrees 100% with my assessment that Trump's parents were terrible. That he's permanently stunted, she writes, as a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum in the cereal aisle. I have said that before numerous times, but we're stuck with this. And I think Bill Barr is right. We shouldn't have to deal with his therapy sessions. It's time to move it along. And I'm still hoping. I know I said no jail time. Part of me still hopes for that. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the latest defense of mine. I've asked our good friend Craig Harrington to come talk with us. Craig is the research director over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. Craig, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for the visualization of Donald Trump as one of those seagulls from Finding Nemo. It really does put it all together. That is exactly the case we're dealing with his retention and mishandling of classified documents. We could just stop right now.
Yeah. So does that defense? Will that defense hold up even in front of a Trump-appointed judge? Will it's all mine. It was in boxes and with my name on them. So clearly mine, right? It's mine, Craig.
Yeah, I mean, that remains to be seen how well it holds up. Your reference there, of course, is to the judge in this case, is a Trump appointee, Eileen Cannon, who, when Trump appointed her, she faced some degree of pushback and blowback from the legal community, which did not think that she met the qualification standards to be a lifetime appointed federal judge. She's handed the Trump team a couple of wins previously, but I'm not a lawyer, but I've been following this case very closely, and I've seen the legal expertise that's been available in public media, and of course talked to a handful of legal experts myself about this. And it does seem that the way this indictment was framed, particularly with damning evidence from Trump in his own words in recordings that were produced as part of the investigation, it does seem like he knew that the documents he kept were not his. But that doesn't mean that that the case might not run into some hurdles, some of them which may or may not be placed there by the judge overseeing the proceedings, which, as we just said, is a Trump appointee who has handed him wins in this case in recent months.
No, I mean, I'm there's so much to this that I think, is important to point out. A big part of it, and I talked about this at the beginning, the fact that the FBI and the DOJ waited so long, that they did so many, mental gymnastics, procedural gymnastics. They did cartwheels and somersaults and you name it. They wore kid gloves. They did all this stuff to try and get him to go, please comply. Please do what the right thing is. Please do what everybody else has done when this happened. Please give us our stuff back. And it took him a year to finally decide to do something about it. I mean, that is mind-blowing to me on how somebody can have that kind of ability to avoid consequence and then still come out and say, no, you're treating me unfairly.
Yeah, and it's not just Trump who's making this claim that he is being treated unfairly. The right-wing media echo chamber and the media and political ecosystem that Trump now controls, but which also mutually supports him. They reacted with kind of very predictable outrage when this 37-count federal criminal indictment was unsealed and displayed to the public, in the past few days. This case involves the mishandling of government records that did not belong to Donald Trump, and it also involves the mishandling of classified materials, which did not belong to Trump. And specifically, what we've seen is a number of arguments that, first of all, it's a claim from his media, from sort of media sycophants, as well as from himself, that he owned these documents, that they were his because he was the president and they were produced during his administration or delivered to him while he was in office. There's very clear black letter law that these documents were not his, but that is going to be his claim. That's going to be his legal argument. And that is certainly the publicity argument that they're making. Then there's another argument that he's started to pick up that really was manufactured by right-wing media, by some of the sort of very serious conservative intellectuals in the right-wing media space, that this prosecution on the Espionage Act in particular is inappropriate because Donald Trump isn't a spy and hasn't committed espionage, and the indictment doesn't accuse him of actual spy crimes. And so him being charged with this act is somehow inappropriate. But that's also black letter law in the Espionage Act. We've seen lots of people who have been charged using the Espionage Act for simple mishandling or misappropriation or theft of government records or classified materials, the dissemination of them, the storage of them improperly. And in fact, the day that Trump was arraigned in Florida, a U.S. airman, not Jack Teixeira, who was an Air National Guard's member of the Air National Guard out of Massachusetts, another U.S. airman was actually sentenced to prison, I believe, for 3 years, with some time served on there. But a final term, a prison sentence of 3 years for the mishandling of classified materials. And then in the case of this U.S. airman, they actually were not intentionally trying to misuse them. This person was actually taking work home to try to get through the backlog of documents and materials. But you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to take classified materials out of appropriate containers or appropriate facilities it's a crime to move them inappropriately. And this person went to prison. They were remanded immediately into federal custody when they were arraigned. Donald Trump wasn't remanded into custody when he was arraigned. Donald Trump got to go to Bedminster, New Jersey, and host a fundraiser. Yeah. So the idea that he's being treated inappropriately, the idea that there's a second tier, a two-tiered system of justice that is sort of out to get Donald Trump, it's actually quite the opposite. There may be a two-tiered system of justice here,
not maybe,
but it's benefiting Donald Trump. Other people who faced much lesser crimes. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of documents, hundreds of classified materials. If he were an airman, if he were a guardsman, he would have been in prison for the past 2 years as the investigation proceeded, not living a millionaire's life down at his private estate in Florida.
Well, as the email I just got said, reality winner got 4 years for one document.
Yeah, that is a perfect example. And the odd thing here is that some of the people who were responsible in that reality winner case, in particular Glenn Greenwald, who's become one of these like Trump who I do not support types of people, he has been just on a warpath about how this prosecution and investigation of Trump is inappropriate. And Glenn Greenwald's publication was actually responsible for, because of its own sort of lax operational security, they actually outed Reality Winner as the source of that classified document that they published when The Intercept published that. He has been on a warpath against this prosecution that Donald Trump faces. But Reality Winner went to jail for literally hundreds of times lesser of a crime. So the idea that Trump is somehow being, singled out or treated unfairly, it just doesn't stand up to basic muster. Of course, that's plenty for right-wing media, but I think for most people, they don't think that this has been a prosecution that's been inappropriate. And you can actually see that in polling. No,
you do. You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Craig Harrington. Craig is the research director over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at the work that they do. Now, Mary sent me an email here during the break because you had said that, on the Espionage Act, that they're not claiming that he's a spy. She simply asks, how do we know?
Yeah, that's an interesting argument because, people have said the indictment doesn't accuse him of committing acts of espionage, like the traditional James Bond types of spying. That the indictment doesn't accuse him of directly handing documents to foreign nationals or to hostile foreign agents or collaborating with a foreign government. But we actually don't know that. We just don't know. The case, the trial hasn't begun. So it's entirely possible that if we went to trial, we'd learn more through the discovery phase or through the open trial process. The indictment doesn't accuse him of being a spy or of handing over government classified secrets in exchange for cash. They don't accuse him of being engaged in a bribery scheme or anything of that nature that you might traditionally consider to be espionage. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. We just literally don't know, and we won't know until there's a trial or there's some sort of plea agreement that comes out of this pretrial process. We literally just don't know.
Yeah, I said from the beginning, I don't think that that's part of it. I think this was purely about a child wanting a shiny thing to be able to show his friends. But again, that's my view of who he is. So he likes to play the big shot. Look, I got classified documents laying all over my bathroom. Look how important I am. That's always been my view of him.
And that certainly seems to be backed up by some of the conversations from Trump himself that we see in the documents. He's a very braggadocious person, and you can read in some of the quotations that they have of him. This is live audio that they have that was uncovered by the investigators. He's kind of just bragging. He's waving things around. He's showing them off. And this again just goes to the idea that he's facing some kind of political persecution for committing these sort of haphazard mistakes and these simple miserly crimes. It's somewhat absurd to think that there's a political motivation to the DOJ going after him. He was just flaunting regulations. He was just openly violating the law for whatever reasons.
If you remember at the beginning of his presidency, there were stories about classified documents being, just left around in a ballroom in Mar-a-Lago with, I think it was the Japanese who were, or it was either the Japanese or Chinese dignitaries they had come in. But there was reports that they had classified material just kind of laying around, where you go, why would you do that other than it's just, hey, look how important I am.
Yeah, this was actually one of the very first sort of Trump White House scandals. I'm not sure exactly of the timing, but it was Donald Trump and then Japanese Prime Minister, who's since been assassinated, Shinzo Abe. And they were having an open conversation. I believe this conversation was with regard to missile strikes, cruise missile strikes against Syrian air bases. And they were just having an open conversation at the dinner table in Mar-a-Lago, surrounded by hundreds of guests. There are photographs that are still on Twitter of documents and sensitive materials just strewn about, and an open conversation that Trump was having with another world leader in full view and within earshot of the public. And those sorts of stories came out of Mar-a-Lago over and over and over again. And none of those, nothing from those 4 years are included in this investigation. It's entirely based upon what he did after he stopped being president, when what he did was effectively stealing documents that did not belong to him, mishandling them and misappropriating them and misusing them, storing them in an unsecure facility, and then obstructing the investigation into recovering them and lying to investigators and refusing to give them back. He also roped multiple people into this criminal conspiracy, including multiple lawyers who signed legal documents lying to the government. And essentially, he forced them to commit crimes on his own behalf by lying to his legal team. And all of those lawyers have since resigned. You know, this isn't a political persecution. This is a person who was extremely careless and haphazard, and almost intentionally so. And the government just pleaded with him for over a year to play ball and return the documents the way everyone else had. Yeah. And what he refused, and he just simply refused to do it until their hands were tied. And this is also, you know, this is not the only litigation. This is not the only criminal or civil litigation that Trump faces. His legal exposure after leaving the presidency, it's truly remarkable, the amount of protection the presidency provided him. He has other criminal investigations in New York City, in New York State, in Fulton County, Georgia, and there's an other federal investigation into his involvement in the January 6th insurrection. All of those cases are completely independent of one another, and they're all proceeding right now because for the 4 years that he was in the office of the presidency, he was shielded from investigation and from prosecution, and now he's not the president. So all of these cases were able to continue, and that doesn't even continue the civil litigation that he lost for the defamation and sexual abuse against E. Jean Carroll. And she's actually bringing that case again because the day after he lost that case, he continued to publicly defame her on what was it, the May 10th CNN town hall that he did that was hosted by Caitlin Collins. All of this legal trouble is happening all at the same time, and he entirely brought it on himself. And, you know, there's no one else to blame. Right-wing media are sort of cobbling together to try to find excuses and deflect and talk about Hunter Biden and Bill Clinton's sock drawer, but just nothing stands up to muster. Like, this is just the simplest scrutiny will tell you that Trump brought all of this on himself. And the reason it's all snowballing right now before the election is because it takes a long time to build these cases. If he weren't running for president, all these cases would still exist, right? And they would still be proceeding on the same timelines.
So what do you say to the person who goes, you know, this is just all a hit job. They're just going after him because they don't want him to run for president. Because there is that thought out there that all of this is they're just targeting poor Donald because they can't beat him again at the ballot box. You've heard that frame. You know, what's the response to that when someone who's that closed-minded? Because I listen to all this stuff and I go, why would we want someone so irresponsible in the White House? And then when does the Republican Party shed themselves of him and be done with him because of all the chaos?
Yeah, well, those are a couple of different questions. And so the first one, the argument that all of this is happening because he's running for president again. Well, so that's a counterfactual that we can't prove, right? He is running for president again, and there's no way to get around the fact we can't run, you know, a real world experiment again. And so while the Jesse Waterses of Fox News and the even the sort of very serious types at the National Review or some other conservative publications, they might be arguing that Trump is only facing the weight of these investigations because he's going to run for president again. And if he won, he'd potentially be shielded from investigation and from prosecution again. The idea that this is all being done because he's running for president is somewhat undermined by the fact that these investigations have been going on for a very long time, and he hasn't been actively running for president that entire time. He was informally a candidate. Everyone knew he was going to run again. He kept saying that he was going to run again, but he hadn't filed any of his paperwork until the paperwork was formally filed. And these investigations almost all predate his filing of his formal paperwork. So you'd have to say that the DOJ like had a crystal ball or was making an educated guess. But that'd be a waste of their time. There's no reason for them to do that.
Going to be fun and entertaining over the next year plus to find out how this works itself out. And maybe we come to a collective moment of let's move on. Maybe, I don't know, but it is entertaining. Craig, I appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Our good friend Craig Harrington. Make sure you check out the work that he does over at Media Matters, MediaMatters.org, the website. Going to take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day that would go down in the history books as the 1943 Detroit race riot. The violence started on Belle Isle, a large island park in the Detroit River. Both white and black Detroiters were visiting the park on that hot, sunny summer Sunday afternoon. The fighting broke out among a number of the white and black youth. Such interracial fighting over the use of parks and recreation space happened frequently throughout the urban North during the 1940s. Soon, false rumors spread about white and black attacks on women and children. Fueled by these rumors, anger grew among members of both communities. The fighting spread across the bridge into the city. The next day, federal troops were called in to restore the peace. Over 3 days of fighting, 34 people were killed. 25 were black, including 17 killed by police and federal troops. 9 were white. The next month, the NAACP produced a report called What Caused the Detroit Riot, an analysis. They found that one of the biggest reasons for the sharp racial animosity was the influx of new black workers into the Detroit labor force. During World War II, Detroit's mighty car industry converted its factories to wartime production. As factory workers went off to fight, demand for labor soared. Southern labor, both black and white, were recruited to come north. Many white Detroiters did not want to work with the new African American hires. From March to May of that year, there were 5 separate work stoppages by white laborers over black hiring or promotion. At the Packard Motor Company, nearly 27,000 workers walked off the job over the upgrade of black workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
So again, Pennsylvania House passed the minimum wage increase, 103 to 100. The Pennsylvania House is broken down with 102 Democrats, 101 Republicans. That means a couple of Republicans went over and voted for it. How amazing! Only I think 3. I think 3 voted for it, and I think 1 Democrat voted against it. Which you go, how do you do that? But again, they're going to raise the minimum wage over the next couple of years from the current state law of $7.15, federal law $7.25, up to $15 an hour by 2026. I'm going to do that in steps. The tip minimum wage is going to go up to 60% of the minimum wage, which currently is $2.83 an hour. That's the minimum wage in this state for tipped workers. Now, what's interesting is Republicans were, well, we can't possibly vote for this. And this woman, Katie Klunk, she's a York County, Pennsylvania Republican. She says, I cannot support a bill that would put a local family restaurant out of business, and along with it, the many employees who make a living at their 3 locations. And I'm going, hold on a second. I don't know about you, but $2.83 an hour? I don't know. I don't know what you buy with that. You can't even buy a Happy Meal with that. $7.25, the minimum after the tips. You can't make a living on that either. I'm confused at where your values are in this. Now understand what they're saying. that it's more important for these handful of business owners to be able to make profit than it is for working people to put food on their kids' table. That's what they're saying. They're saying that we've chosen sides in this. Not that hey, we want to make sure that everyone's able to survive and make ends meet. No. It's all about, we got to have these small business owners who, give me a break. $15 an hour over. Now remember, this is with tips and all of that. If you're not making that, there's a problem. Minimum wage right now, $290 a week. Who can survive on that? You're talking $15,000 a year. Who can survive on that? Now, according to the Employment Policy Institute, because as soon as Pennsylvania passed this, immediately they sent out their numbers, said it's going to cost Pennsylvania almost 86,000 jobs by 2026. Half of them are going to be at bars and restaurants. They're going to lose that. It's going to cost almost 32,000 tipped workers their jobs. 1 out of 4 workers are going to lose their job in the restaurant industry. And you go, hold on a second. So what you're saying is there are that many people who make below the minimum wage, make below that kind of wage to be able to start, that they're going to lose those jobs because they're not making that kind of income? Is that the kind of economy we want? Is that a positive thing? I'm telling you, at some point, we've got to demand better. Let's go to the phones. You got Barry on line 1. Barry, how are you?
Yeah, good. Good, Rick. Just to have a job ain't enough because slaves had jobs. So
Truth.
That's not just to have a job ain't enough. And the second point, Rick, was I saw a poll approval rating. I thought Trump was 33 and Joe Biden was 31. I can't explain that. The third point was union members voted for Hillary 51%, and for Joe and 56%. So that's disgusting to me as a union member myself.
I agree.
So that's all I got, Rick.
I appreciate it, Barry. No, that's good stuff. No, I mean, to go through it, simply, the fact that union members look to Republicans as a possible island is amazing to me. And it tells you how well unions have done for their members to make them think that they can be Republicans, to make them think that, that they have their interest at heart, when the fact of the matter is Republicans have done everything they can possibly to destroy unions and destroy the ability for working people to make a living. It's just crazy. And Barry, I appreciate the call, man. Thanks so much. But this is one of those moments where working people have got to wake up. Now you go, but Rick, Joe Biden's numbers are down, and it's solely because you look at the power of the right-wing media. As my kid was telling me yesterday, all he sees on his social media feeds is all stuff attacking Biden, all stuff attacking Democrats. Democrats don't even seem to be competing in this space. Right now, we should be talking about raising the minimum wage at every moment. The fact that you've got Republicans saying, sorry, 7.25, no, you don't deserve more than that. Every person who works for a living who makes less than $15 an hour should be marching in Pennsylvania, or a state that doesn't have a $15 an hour minimum wage, should be marching to the election office to get a voter registration to vote in the next election, to start throwing these bums out. But the reality is the moneyed interests know. They know if they throw out a little red meat, talk about, this bit of division, this bit of outrage candy, keep funding this right-wing media, keeps shoving this stuff down our throat, we're going to eat ourselves. And we're not going to fight on these important issues. 7.25. Our minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. That is disgraceful. In the wealthiest country in the history of civilization, at its wealthiest moment, that's what we're telling workers we think of them. That's disgraceful. Gonna take a quick break. Right back.
talking about the heat index reaching anywhere between 110 to 120.
Blackouts and deadly storms slam troubled Texas grid amid early heat wave. Another insurer ditches Florida as hurricane season gets underway. Plus,
what it can help doing is to make sure that we take pressure off the ocean in the face of climate change.
UN members adopt first ever treaty to protect marine life on the high seas.
All of those adventures on the high seas straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Every time it's real hot, climate change. Every time it's real cold, climate change. When it rains a lot, it's because of climate change. And you guessed it, Canada, with burning forests, 400 separate fires, is because of climate change.
Correct, Fox News. You're starting to get it. Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Well, Desi Doyen, the summer right out of the gate is nothing but trouble already all across the nation, it seems.
Yes, unfortunately it is. Extreme summer heat is here early. Triple-digit temperatures prompted heat advisories across much of the South over the weekend, triggering deadly tornadoes and thunderstorms that knocked out power from Oklahoma to Mississippi. In northeast Texas, a windstorm knocked out electricity to nearly 500,000 customers amid blistering heat and stifling humidity that combined pushed the heat index above 120 degrees in some areas.
And it's only June.
Yep, and it didn't help matters when a nuclear power plant was taken offline, but clean energy came to the rescue. A brand new backup battery system installed just a week prior stabilized the grid and prevented a broader blackout.
Very nice.
Plus, according to University of Houston Professor Ed Hurst,
our solar capacity has grown dramatically over the last 2 years. That's really helping us out right now.
Well, you're welcome, Texas.
The record-setting heat wave across the South is forecast to persist for several days, further straining electric grids. Mexico is also grappling with record-shattering early season heat that has disrupted its national games underway this week, with several athletes already hospitalized with heat stroke after temperatures there topped 122 degrees.
122 degrees.
Yes. In other news, Kansas, the nation's biggest producer of wheat, is bracing for the worst wheat crop in 60 years. AP reports that many farmers in Kansas are abandoning their crops due to a combination of severe, persistent drought and high fertilizer and fuel costs. Southwest Kansas is currently one of the nation's driest areas right now, according to the U.S. Drought Monitor.
Oh, when everything is dry, it's climate change, isn't it, Des?
It is. In the Atlantic Ocean, hurricane season is now underway, with Storm Brett brewing amid unprecedented hot ocean temperatures that meteorologists say are more reminiscent of early August. And right on cue, another insurance company has exited the state of Florida.
Flexit.
Farmers Insurance Group says it has stopped issuing new homeowners property coverage in Florida, citing the high cost of reconstruction after last year's very expensive Hurricane Ian. Over the last 2 years alone, 15 insurance companies have left the Florida market.
Wow, you had warned about that years ago. And when those insurers leave the market, who takes their place? The state? Taxpayers?
Yep. But the most severe ocean heat wave on Earth right now is in the North Sea. Waters around the UK and Ireland are seeing temperatures several degrees above normal, which scientists warn poses serious threats to marine species by disrupting the marine food web and oxygen, because warmer water holds less dissolved oxygen.
Oh, and I'm sure you're going to blame that on climate change, too.
Yeah.
Oh.
But some good news. The United Nations on Monday adopted the first ever legally binding treaty to protect marine life and biodiversity in international waters, known as the high seas. The treaty allows for the creation of vast marine sanctuaries protected from destructive human activities and establishes ground rules for resource extraction, like proposed deep seabed mining. But first, it must be internally ratified by at least 60 governments to enter into force and become a legally binding instrument. Finally, in the U.S., renewable electricity has hit a major new milestone. A new analysis of federal data finds that wind and solar generated more electricity than coal, a lot more, in the first half of 2023. It's the first time ever that wind and solar have outpaced old king coal over a full 5-month stretch without factoring in hydroelectric power. Energy experts say the milestone illustrates how quickly the U.S. electricity sector is transforming despite numerous structural hurdles.
Nice. See you, Cole. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks, Twitters, and Mastodons at Green News Report.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the big story today, Hunter Biden pled guilty. And of course, the Trumpites are all, he got kid glove treatment, he got a special deal. You know, Josh Hawley and those idiots out there say, look at how the DOJ treats him. He pled guilty. He's being held accountable. And you know what the president didn't do? Didn't whine. There's no complaining. You're no whining. You're no, oh, poor woe is me. None of that. Oh, I can't wait for the day when Trump is found guilty. The collective whine. That will be a fun day. And here to share some thoughts on the potential of that and the latest defense. Hey, everything's mine. It was in my boxes. It's mine. Your 2-year-old defense. I've asked Fred Wellman to come talk with us. Fred's a Democratic strategist and the host of On Democracy with F.P. Wellman, part of the Midas Touch Network. Fred, thanks for taking time for us.
Good to see you again, Rick. How are you, sir?
I am good. So what do you make of the Hunter Biden, the big story? He pled guilty to a couple of misdemeanors.
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be one. I pretend to be a lot of things, but not a lawyer. Everything I've seen, all the research I've done, I did my own research, of course, is that it was a reasonable deal. It was 2 misdemeanors. I mean, he got what anybody would have gotten. He made a mature decision to accept his guilt. He paid the money back. The taxes were, I saw a great analysis of it on CNN where since he already paid the money back, he didn't file on time. And he was an admitted drug addict. The court recognizes he was a drug addict at the time. If they had gone to court, try to get him to plead guilty, what they call the mens rea would not have worked because the court does recognize that addiction addles your thinking. He has made amends since then. As far as the gun charge the Republicans are trying to blow up, that was literally filling out an application. The gun was gone in 2 weeks. He doesn't even have the gun. So the whole thing is much ado about, doing the right thing. So, congratulations to Mr. Biden, Hunter Biden, for doing the right thing. I have no problem with that. What I found hilarious was the terminology, the way I did a video for the My Such guys today talking about how, I don't know if you noticed, but once McCarthy came out, he said, oh, well, this is a sweetheart deal. And everyone came out the sweetheart deal, which just shows you how the Republican messaging machine works, right? The Republicans put out their talking points, probably from the RNC, said, here is, the talking point. It's a sweetheart deal. And everybody used it. I found 10 or 20 tweets from elected officials and their supporters. Stephen Miller, Kayleigh McEnany was mouthing those words on Fox News Forum. The machine of the Republican messaging machine worked. And what's concerning to you and me, I think, as activists and pseudo-journalists, because we're pseudo-journalists, is how the media had to pick that up. I mean, immediately you had a New York Times story come out saying, was this a sweetheart deal? Using that term, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, all of them. Was it a sweetheart deal? And they got legal experts going on for 10, 20, 5, 10 minutes trying to explain how it wasn't. But this is where it works, right? You just keep saying that term, sweetheart deal, sweetheart deal, sweetheart deal. And it works. It works. And I wish my friends on the Democratic side would get better at that.
This is right where my mind was going, because Republicans play this game so well. You know,
Perfectly.
the Tucker Carlson, I'm just asking questions here. You know, was Hitler a good guy if you got to know him? I'm just asking questions. You know, did the Holocaust really happen?
Rick.
I don't know, but just asking questions. And
Well,
then
it's the
our media jumps right on board. Like you said, did it really happen? Was he really a nice guy? And they fall right in the line because the Republicans know how to pull the strings. You're spot on.
And this is my anger when the indictments came out for Trump. Look, we knew Jack Smith was going to indict him for the Mar-a-Lago documents. Everybody knew it. I had guests on my show saying, "Oh, he's getting indicted." Matter of fact, my guest Dennis Africa predicted the date almost to the day. He said, Fred, June. It's gonna be June." I'm like, okay. So we knew it was coming, and yet the Democrats had no talking points, had no preparation. They should have had it all preloaded. Here's the talking points. And look, I don't know what those talking points are. That's not my job, but I would say something along the lines of the former president has been charged by a jury of his grand jury with 37 counts of violating the Espionage Act. These are crimes against the people of America. You know, I could do it in 5 minutes, and they didn't. They sat flat-footed. My understanding from insiders is the Dems even put out talking points not to say anything. They literally told their elected officials not only not what to say, but not to say anything at all. And look, I can get Joe Biden doing it. That's great. But I said something on Twitter. I was like, I don't mind the president keep his mouth shut. That's his job. I don't want him to talk. But we should guys like us should be armed with talking points. And get what happened. Immediately Republicans were able to turn it around. Their talking point was as a political prosecution, and they've been pounding that. And it works.
Yeah. But here's the thing, Fred. I don't think you or me, we don't need talking points. I think we're usually right on the issue from the beginning.
Right.
I think that our politicos need to figure this game out.
Well, that's it.
Because they're getting beaten at it so badly. I mean,
and it's coordination. Again, I said that word a couple times in our interview today. It's coordination. It is, look, a coordinated messaging campaign works. This is what I did for the Army. This is what I did as a civilian running a PR firm. You say the same message over and over and over and pound it. And the Dems just cannot do that. Like I said, I found at least 20 instances today within 2 hours of sweetheart deal, sweetheart deal.
No, I'm looking at my Twitter feed. My Twitter feed is all that.
Sweetheart
Elon
deal.
Musk made sure I saw sweetheart deal
all
day today. I got to see every Republican make their pilgrimage to Trump Mountain to make the defense that this was a sweetheart deal and Donald's being persecuted. And the weird thing is Trump actually came out yesterday and admitted he did exactly what he's charged with. And
wasn't that great?
It is, but it's not just great. We already knew this, and his base still isn't going to pay attention.
No. I thought Brett did a great job. He was asking. What was interesting to me is watching that unfold. That interview with Brett Baer was Trump was. He rang his bell a couple of times. Trump is scared. John Kelly, whom I have no regard for whatsoever, I actually hold in disregard. But John Kelly said about a week ago that Trump is scared S-less, right? Yep. He is scared, the best word, and I think I saw that. I think you saw that. I saw Tim Miller, who's on my show this week, as a matter of fact, did a live watching of the show, of the interview. And he said it. There's that pause where at one point Brett Baer said that a former president about his charges, hey, are you worried about this? And Trump stumbled. This is a guy who's been on camera since he could, get into the Studio 54. This is a guy who lives on camera, and there was a pause there for a couple seconds where he kind of thought. And anybody who's been a watcher of Trump as long as some of us have as professionals, he is scared. He knows he's in trouble. He talks a good game, but these are real charges. They're open and shut. Smith has the witnesses. Smith has the tapes. He's got people going to go on trial. And so it was an interesting interview. I rather enjoyed the clips. Of course, I can't watch the guy because it makes me insane. But some of the clips were just nuts, right?
But here's the thing.
But
and
he admitted
this is where I get into this weird world, Fred, because
Yeah.
I had a bunch of people today go, well, Hunter Biden did all this stuff. So this is how this math goes. And help me, because I went to a different school,
Right.
where 2 + 2 = 4. In this new world of new math, Hunter Biden, pleading guilty to a couple misdemeanors, basically cancels out everything Trump and the Trump kids have done. Because
Well, that's it. Clearly,
it's the Biden.
And look,
Biden
here's the
family.
thing, Rick. I'm worried about Hunter Biden getting reelected. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Maybe he'll impeach him. Wait a minute. No, he's not in government. Maybe they'll kick him out of his government job. Wait, he doesn't have a government job. He's a private citizen, for God's sake. You know, my friend Kevin Cruz put out a Substack, I think it was today, talking about Billy. Remember Billy Carter? You're old enough to remember
Billy
Billy
Beer.
Carter.
I still remember Billy
Great
Beer.
scandal. Billy Beer. You know, how the big embarrassment of the Carter administration was Billy. Billy was a civilian, just like Hunter Biden.
And
Hunter
Roger Clinton. I mean, Roger had problems. You had a couple of Reagans who had problems.
Yep. Yeah, hell, George Bush is having George Bush himself. But here we are, and everybody's having. And so the attempts to compare the two. That's why they're so desperate for this crazy Burisma stuff and the big guy getting $5 million and how witnesses keep suddenly disappearing or dying. It's so crazy how they all die.
Yeah.
It's all just a smokescreen to try. Again, it is the Steve Bannon technique, right? Throw enough S at it, right? If we throw enough poop at it, it'll stick, right? And that's where this is just a barrage of poop.
It's a storm, yes. And thank you for that. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Fred Wellman. Fred is a Democratic strategist and host of On Democracy with FP Wellman on the Midas Touch Network. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Now, here's the thing. This is the weird thing, because over the weekend, I'm sure you saw the Joe Rogan, Peter Hotez, RFK, Kook, dust up. And this is kind of the same. It's the platforming of insanity. It's it's saying, this equals this. Like, Hunter Biden, pleading guilty to a couple of misdemeanors, forgives all of the crimes of Trump and all of them. It's the same kind of thing. And, I said yesterday that it shows that there are crazy people on the Democratic side too. And I'm not sure where you put RFK Jr., but he's still on the Democratic side somewhat, even though he is going to, go into the Maniac Moms for Liberty event.
Yeah. I mean, that says a lot right there, right? The Moms for Fascism. No, I agree. I think the insanity, what you saw unfold this weekend, in many ways, I think is the death knell of Twitter in a lot of ways. I mean, if I was an advertiser, first of all, I would never put, look, I used to be a PR guy. I did social media for a number of my clients. Not one of my clients would be advertising on Twitter. The danger of having an advertisement appear next to a neo-Nazi tweet or a racist tweet or something about anti-vaccines, it's just too great. Elon's not making any attempt to stop that. So that's another part of it. But you're right. The insanity of the mind space we had, Rick, we had a Missouri congressman tweet this morning, I think it was, you can't make this up, a picture of Dr. Hotez next to a picture of Joe Rogan shirtless, and said, here's Hotez and here's Rogan. Who would you take your health advice from? I don't know. The doctor, the world-renowned immunologist, or the dude who works out a lot. And, it's just I should definitely take it from the guy who does steroids and weed. It's just, this is a sitting congressman from Missouri who, by the way, fun fact, ran unopposed. I mean, it's just a train wreck, man. And so we're in a post, and we've heard that term before, the post-fact world, but we're definitely in a post-fact world. I think we're in a post-reality world.
Yeah. This is what I talked about yesterday. I had someone email say, just because they've got a bunch of initials behind their name doesn't mean they know anything. Yes, it does.
It literally does.
A PhD, they know more than I do.
It's actually what it means. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Alex went to school and stuff. And then there's a crazy thing. They actually had to stay doing that work for years and years. But hey, Google. You always Google.
Yeah, I mean, and because do you agree that Hotez should not have debated RFK Jr.? Because I think there's no way you platform a kook like RFK Jr. No,
there were some really smarter people than me on Twitter who really pointed out how there's just no winning. You won't win this debate, right? It's not it's not a debate, first of all. It's going to be Joe Rogan, well prepared with talking points. It's going to be RFK, who's got his exact talking points. You're going to have a doctor who is going to say, well, there's study after study. Well, I had this study from Japan in 2014 that says this. How are you going to fact check that in real time? The doctors are going to have thousands memorized. It's not a realistic thing. There's all you can do. There's no positive net gain from going anywhere near this discussion. And
the second the doctor's honest about something and says, look, maybe there is going to be some negative, that's all you're going to hear.
That's what doctors have to say. Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, not every surgery works, right? Some people die, it's just, it's a travesty. And the fact that the owner of that platform is so deeply involved in spreading that travesty just says how broken the whole system is. The fact that any investors are continuing to leave their money. And that's where we go to the whole wow, listen to me. God, I sound like an anti-capitalist now, but the capitalist system, the VC system, the investor world where reputable banks gave billions of dollars to this total nut job who has proven himself to be a complete freaking nut job, and every day shows he's a effing nut job, and they haven't pulled their funds. They haven't pulled back. Like, well, Tesla, it's just, it shows the complete failure of that system. I get very aggravated. I used to be a businessman, and I had, I was really into entrepreneurship, and the people they throw on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine like that, these guys are a travesty, and Elon is living proof of that. And with this weekend's events with Dr. Hotez, who's respected and by all means a decent man. And here's the punchline of this whole thing. The final point I'll make on that is none of those guys, look, Joe Rogan's not going to have a nut job show up at his house. Elon Musk, I think he sleeps on couches. He's not going to have a nut job, but he's surrounded by security. This is a guy who walks around Twitter headquarters with a 4-man security detail. He does not have to worry about somebody showing up at his house saying, dude, why won't you argue with him? When a guy actually showed up at Peter Hotez's house in Houston and accosted him about not debating on Joe Rogan's crappy podcast. So that's what makes me mad as a person who's been subjected to the world. As you know, I was the Lincoln Project executive director. We had some stuff happen. I don't know if you heard. And at one point we had security. They wanted to put security in my house because I was getting so many death threats. People posted pictures of my house online. I lived on a very busy street in downtown Richmond, Virginia. You could stand on the sidewalk and put bullets through my window as I sat on my couch. None of those guys stirring up these nut jobs will ever face that threat. And that's what really makes me viscerally angry as a man who has faced that threat, as a man who had to disassociate himself from his ex-wife's business and his daughter's business because so many people were sending them threats because I was remotely associated with them.
No, I mean,
none of those people causing these problems will ever face that.
And that's the reason they do this stuff. It's
exactly.
This is where I want to finish this up.
It's a joke. It's a game.
Right. This is where I want to finish this up because they know that they can engage and they can activate the dim who are going to go out there and do the harassment. They're going to walk into a Target and harass employees because there's some merchandise on the shelf that they don't agree with. They're going to go into places and they're going to intimidate people and they're going to threaten them to get them to do what they want. And they look, the right understands this works.
Yep, it does. Hey, look, 1923. Okay, it works then too, right? Hitler says things and brown shirts appear in the streets and beat up communists, right? Again, it's the same playbook. It's a 100-year-old playbook or more of the fascist playbook, which is, create chaos. And then of course, what's going to happen is only Trump can bring us peace, right? Only they can stop this chaos. That's the punchline. They cause the violence. They incite the violence. They encourage the violence. And then when the violence occurs, they bemoan the violence to show that they should be in charge because they can stop the violence. It is a playbook as old as guys wrapped in brown shirts marching to Rome,
or in blue shirts with khaki pants on,
as they are today. Yep, same
Scary
people.
Stuff. But Fred, I appreciate the time. I hope you'll come back and share more with us down the road.
Thank you. I hope you'll catch the show every Friday night in the Midas Touch Network. We're doing great. Love to join us.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, Fred Wellman. Make sure you check out his podcast on democracy with FP Wellman on the Midas Touch Network. I'll take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The phone lines are open. Give Rick a call at 1-866-416-RICK. That's 1-866-416-7425.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
To show you just how far that the right will go. Now, understand, there is an all-out assault on anyone transgender, or really in this day, anyone different. And look, I'm not the mayor of Wokistan. I'm not out there, marching in the streets. But I do understand when people are being attacked, and I understand when people's rights are being violated. And I look at the transgender community, and there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of attacks legislatively. And you look at Tennessee and all the stuff that they've done. There was a story today over, it was the National Tennessean that pointed out that Vanderbilt University has turned over medical records of patients who are seeking gender-affirming care. You take your kids there assuming you've got some privacy, and now because the state's attorney general is investigating the hospital because they believe there might be fraud, there might be some fraud there, so we want those personal records of all of those people that you treated. And I look at this as just a backdoor way of getting at who is doing this stuff. Now, look, as I've said before, I don't understand it. I don't get it, but I don't have to. This is not a place for government. This is for families. This is for families and their doctors to decide. That's where this should be. Something conservatives used to believe. But you've got these attorneys generals, you've got these state legislatures who are trying to, we're going to intimidate these people. So, of course, Vanderbilt comes out and says, hey, we had to turn this over. So all of these families are freaking out, going, are we exposed? Is Tennessee going to be the next Texas where they're going to start attacking these families? Now, of course, the Attorney General's office is like, it's unprecedented that the hospital would do this. Why would they do this? They're doing it because everyone knows why you're doing this investigation. It's to intimidate people. It's to get to them. And I'll tell you, this kind of abuse of our laws, I don't care which side of the trans issue you're on. As I said, I don't understand it. I'm probably never going to understand it. But I believe in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe in people being able to follow their course. I believe in government staying out of my life. This is kind of a big liberty deal. So for all those people wearing the I believe in liberty shirts or freedom on their trucks, this is that issue. And even if you don't, like me, understand why or how or what someone's going through, or you should not want a government to have this kind of power. You should not want to have a government with this kind of ability to influence someone's life. Now, fortunately, our laws, somewhat, I look at the case in Arkansas, where a judge in Arkansas a federal judge struck down the state's law forbidding medical treatment for teenagers and for minors in the transition phase. Now, again, I don't know what all that means. I'm not saying that I do, but the legal system is saying maybe this is too far. Understand, a good portion of our legal system set up by who? The former guy. I'm hopeful that sanity rules. Now, do we need more research? Sure, we need a lot of things. But what we don't need are ideologues, especially religious zealot ideologues in places like Arkansas and Tennessee, being able to intimidate and harass families. Because that's what this is about. This is about harassing people. This is about intimidation. This is about power. As much as it's about the messaging, as much as it is about tearing us apart. And because look, there are a lot of things that have to be dealt with. There are a lot of things that, we haven't been able to have a discussion around on this issue because we're stuck at the baseline, whether people should be able to exist or not. We can't get to the next level. Like, for instance, the Supreme Court evidently today declined to hear a case of a Christian college in Missouri who doesn't know where to put a transgender student. They've got male and female dorms. Where do you put them? The Supreme Court said, well, we're going to throw up our hands. This is one of these moments where, as a society, we got to figure this stuff out, and we can. This is the thing. We're big boys and girls. We're big boys and girls. We can solve problems, especially complex, difficult ones like this. Just my thought. I want to hear yours, though. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Right back after this. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1943. That was the day that would go down in the history books as the 1943 Detroit race riot. The violence started on Belle Isle, a large island park in the Detroit River. Both white and black Detroiters were visiting the park on that hot, sunny summer Sunday afternoon. The fighting broke out among a number of the white and black youth. Such interracial fighting over the use of parks and recreation space happened frequently throughout the urban North during the 1940s. Soon, false rumors spread about white and black attacks on women and children. Fueled by these rumors, anger grew among members of both communities. The fighting spread across the bridge into the city. The next day, federal troops were called in to restore the peace. Over 3 days of fighting, 34 people were killed. 25 were black, including 17 killed by police and federal troops. 9 were white. The next month, the NAACP produced a report called What Caused the Detroit Riot? An Analysis. They found that one of the biggest reasons for the sharp racial animosity was the influx of new black workers into the Detroit labor force. During World War II, Detroit's mighty car industry converted its factories to wartime production. As factory workers went off to fight, demand for labor soared. Southern labor, both black and white, were recruited to come north. Many white Detroiters did not want to work with the new African-American hires. From March to May of that year, there were 5 separate work stoppages by white laborers over black hiring or promotion. At the Packard Motor Company, nearly 27,000 workers walked off the job over the upgrade of black workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Years ago, a Texas lawmaker got caught using his official position to enrich himself by taking money from special interests in exchange for voting their way. The culprit did not deem this as corrupt, but just the normal ethic of an enterprising business transaction. I seen my chances, he explained, and I took 'em. This is the Clarence Thomas Code of Ethics. As has been widely reported, this Supreme Court judge, who reliably rules for corporate supremacy over the people's interests, has secretly been on the take for years from a billionaire corporate right-winger. Real estate tycoon Harlan Crow, an extremist activist for plutocratic government, has been lavishing millions of dollars worth of luxury vacations, private jet travel, family housing, and educational payments, and other gratuities on Thomas. Yet, this supposedly supreme lawyer says he detected no whiff of bribery, nor did he see any need to inform us commoners of it. He simply seen his chances and took 'em. But Thomas knew damn well that it was improper, corrupting, and disgusting. After all, during the last 3 decades, he has consistently voted for court rulings to make such obvious graft legal. For example, he's voted again and again to drain common sense from our anti-corruption laws, declaring that it is legal for a corporation to keep a public official on private retainer, that it's okay for political officials to sell access to their offices, that the appearance of corruption is not corrupt, and directly relevant to Harlan Crow, Thomas voted that it is technically not bribery to try influencing public officials by bestowing a series of gifts to them over time. This is Jim Hightower saying, if it seems to you like the system is rigged to favor the powerful, there you have it. Clarence Thomas is both the rigger and the beneficiary of the system.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a quick shout out to my brothers and sisters in the Teamsters Union who right now are voting to ratify a contract in the freight industry. As I understand, first year, $350 raise, not bad. I'd like to see what's in the rest of it. Had a couple of folks reach out and ask what I thought. I got to know what's in it. But this is what the members will decide, and I'm looking forward to see what the ratification vote comes out to look like. But here's the thing. We see labor at the front right now. Workers finally saying, coming out of the pandemic, saying, hey, we deserve better. We want better wages, hours, conditions of voice, say, some dignity. And we're seeing organizing happening around the country. And look, we focused a lot on the Amazons and the Starbucks and those. But there's a lot of organizing going on that, well, we don't see an awful lot of. And here to share some thoughts on one of those campaigns going on at Medieval Times out in California, I've asked Mel Buer to come talk with us. Mel is an associate editor over at the Real News Network. They're one of the folks who do some outstanding labor reporting. Mel, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on.
So we see these big stories all over the place. The Amazons, we see the Apples, we see the organizing going on. But these smaller campaigns, they don't quite get as much attention. Why is this situation at Medieval Times something we should be looking at?
It's interesting to see what's going on at the Medieval Times location in Buena Park, California. Right now, their performers have been on a ULP strike for the last over 4 months now. They organized last November, following a sort of a short wave of organizing that had happened at other locations across the country, one in New Jersey and I think another in Schaumburg, Illinois, if I'm not mistaken. And these are performers who are organizing with the Guild of Variety Artists, and they're smaller shops. You don't see very many. This isn't a warehouse full of 1,000 employees. This is a smaller shop of about 40 employees who are organizing with this particular union, who have sort of seen what has been going on with the more independent organizing and are trying to sort of stake their own claim for better working conditions,
right?
And are feeling the confidence and have felt the confidence to be able to do that.
What's exciting about hearing these stories is, it harkens me back to some of the stories I heard about in the 40s and 50s, when you had smaller shops popping up, and you weren't part of one of the bigger unions, but people felt empowered in their workplaces locally to be able to band together. So for me, this is kind of harkening back to the old days.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And it's really cool to see what's been going on in the last couple of months at this location. These 40 employees with this union have been on strike since February. After the strike broke, after that news broke in February, sound and lighting technicians who were part of a different department at this location of Medieval Times organized with IATSE and had a successful, I think, unanimous election in the last month. And just recently, the retail clerks who also work at the same location, about 20 of them, filed with the UFCW. So, you're seeing these departments, these various groups kind of working with each other and feeling that sort of solidarity and feeling empowered to be able to organize their own departments within the same shop, and that's, I think, a really wonderful thing to see in these smaller sort of, groups, know.
Now, the bigger thing here is, and look, we could talk about probably 1,000 situations just like what's going on at Medieval Times, where workers exercise their rights. They demand to have a voice, and the company says, no, we don't care. You're not getting a contract. We're not even going to sit down and really talk. We'll play, but we're not really going to talk, and there'll be no first contract. This, to me, again, is one of those moments where you look at how weak our labor laws are and how pathetically weak our labor laws are and why we needed reform decades ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you're seeing the same thing at this location. The corporation is not, as far as the workers are concerned, engaging in any sort of earnest activity at the bargaining table to be able to end this labor action, right? They don't quite give a hoot. And unfortunately, that means that these workers stay out on the line longer. Some of them have already picked up part-time jobs to be able to make things, work in the meantime. And they were spending 6 days a week out on the line. They're now spending 5 days full days out there, day in and day out, just trying to get a measure of respect from this corporation that takes in a lot of money, has the ability and, finances to fly performers in to replace the striking workers, for example. And put
so
them
I
up
was
in
going to ask, that was going to be
hotels
my next question. So we're bringing scabs across the line so this can continue.
Yes. Up until I think the first month or so, they had flown folks in from, or attempted to fly folks in from their locations in Canada, which violated labor law, and they weren't able to do that, and we're talking about performers who are engaging in dangerous stunts, multiple shows a night, getting paid less than $20 an hour to do these types of things. They're skilled workers and skilled performers, and they're concerned about these replacement workers working too much or not having enough training, and exposing them to injury and exposing these crowds to potential liability. These are all the problems that we see whenever we bring scabs in anywhere, right? It's definitely caused some strife among these workers, and they don't want to be out on the line. They want to be performing for folks, and they want to get back to work, and they're just waiting the company out and trying to get them back to the bargaining table.
Yeah, but it shouldn't it shouldn't have to be this difficult. And look, my mind immediately goes, what's wrong with the people sitting in the stands that you're going to go and see scab performers? But that's just my old school upbringing of, you don't cross someone's picket line, and you certainly don't reward people for doing that. But again, I have to bring this back to the reality of our situation and how bad our labor laws are, that we're in this situation. This should not be, this kind of situation shouldn't have to happen.
Right. I agree. I think that especially with these folks, at one point there was a culture that you don't cross a picket line. And I've been out to the picket line multiple times, and it's about, I would say it's a mix of individuals who show up for these performances. Some of them get their refunds, and they stand out on the line for 20 minutes and they talk with workers. Some folks just keep on walking, and they say, well, we want to take our kid in for, their birthday, or we had these tickets for months, or whatever excuse they want to give. They're willing to walk past these folks, or, they tell these folks, these are, a lot of these performers are in their 20s. And so they say, this isn't a real job. Get a different job if you don't like this one, the typical sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating for them. They're doing their best because they love what they do, and they're doing their best to secure better working conditions for themselves and for the people who take these jobs if they decide to leave it, and that's a really important thing to really hone in on here.
You listen to the Rick Smith Show here with Mel Bauer. Mel is an associate editor over at the Real News Network, therealnews.com, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do. But here's the thing. I love that frame. This isn't a real job. And when I was doing organizing, I used to hear this stuff all the time. I'm only going to be here 6 months, so I don't really care I don't really care. And you go, but, someone else is going to take this job. And look, in 6 months, I'm going to come back, and you're still going to be here, and you could have made it this much better. It's classic deflection. It's classic. There's always somewhere better down the road. I've always said, if that's the case, why not make this better and then continue on down the road?
Well, and you have to really think about it here. These are performers performing on horses, right? They're performing these incredible stunts, right? This live action fighting, they're throwing each other around. These are not safe things to do, right? They do it with a measure of safety because they've been trained to do so. It is skilled work. Right. It is work that I can't do, nor could I pretend to do. It's work that most folks who go to the show can't do, right? So, in that sort of vein, it's like, this is a real job. This is these are folks who are performing for an audience that pays money to be there, and they're getting paid less than $20 an hour to do it. It just doesn't work in the greater Los Angeles area, where that is not a livable wage. Doesn't work for the level of skill that they have to amass in order to do the job safely and to perform in an entertaining way, right? And it certainly doesn't do any good for any person who's either standing across from these strikers or walking past that picket line to tell them that the work that they're doing doesn't mean anything. Because if it didn't mean anything, then they wouldn't cross that line, right? They wouldn't still go to the show. So who's right here?
Yeah.
Clearly not these folks who say this job is quote unquote not real. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And then look, I've said all along in the 18 years I've been doing this show, every job is one worthy of dignity and respect. Every job is worthy of being able to support yourself on. Doesn't matter what you do, from street sweeper to doctor, everywhere in between, you should be able to lead a reasonable existence and have some dignity and respect in that job. And what we measure dignity and respect in is, are you able to put food on the table, keep a roof over your head? Are you able to take care of yourself and your family? And I think every job, no matter how you diminish it, should have at least that bare minimum. At least that's my thought.
Right. I agree. 100%.
So the question then becomes, how do we take this moment? How do we take this what's going on and use this to get people around to the same ideas, we do need major comprehensive labor law reform. We do need a political movement of working class folks taking off the red hats and the blue hats and getting that hard hat on and rebuilding the working class of this country. How do we move in this? How do we use this for that?
Well, I mean, this is something that I've kind of learned in my certainly briefer time. I'm younger, but briefer time standing on picket lines or reporting from picket lines is that oftentimes the best political education that you can have is to walk out there and talk to the workers, right? Especially in your own area. I covered the Kellogg strike back in 2021, and that was down the road from a house that I grew up in. I drove past that plant every day on my way to school. And so it became having conversations with your neighbors at that point, right? And being able to kind of reach across that political divide, whatever you think is that divide, it doesn't really exist because you're talking to folks who live down the street from you, right? Who work in the same area, who understand, in one way or another, the life that you live, right? And that I think has been, something that can really kind of increase the education, the labor education, the political education, the radicalizing moment, whatever you want to call it, right? Simply by just going out to the line and hearing these folks' concerns and seeing what they're trying to accomplish and seeing how that can and is applied to any industry or position of labor in this country is a really great place to start, right? Because you do end up finding that despite your political differences, there's still these little through lines, right? That folks understand, right? Bosses and managers are usually screwing you over. You're not getting paid enough for the work that you do. You can't afford a minor emergency, even though, you're paying 20% of your paycheck into health insurance or a retirement that may or may not come to pass when you get older. These are all like sort of universal problems that most folks have something to talk about when you really get into the meat of the conversation. And those are the moments where you can kind of really build that understanding, right? And get past this sort of, well, if you are getting paid this much, then these quote unquote essential workers should get paid more. The sort of divides that managers, bosses, corporations, and the wider government really likes to just drive those wedges in. And all it takes is just having a face-to-face calmly with the folks that you see when you come across a picket line or any sort of political action. It's very simple. Folks just need to have the patience to do that.
It's that old school getting back out in the streets and talking to people, looking them in the eye, face to face, like we did back in October and November last year when we did our Working Class Heroes radio tour, and got into those places and had these conversations. Which is why I think it's so important that you guys are doing what you're doing at the Real News Network, and I hope folks will take a look at it. TheRealNews.com is the website. You guys are independent. You guys are out there telling stories that are right in this line that working people, I think, need and should be consuming.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, the Real News Network has been around since about 2007, 2008. And what we really are trying to do is create this space where folks who normally don't have a voice in these larger conversations can step up to the podium and talk about what's important to them, particularly in labor struggles.
Yeah. And it's not about the horse race and the divide. It's more about the things that, and this is what I've found in looking at your site. It's more about the things that we need to know, like these strikes, like these actions that are going on, information that we need, not the stuff that's going to tear us apart, maybe the stuff that's just going to bring us together.
Right. Yeah, and we believe that individuals from the community who do this work day in and day out are the experts on these topics, right? So these are the folks that we want to platform. We really care about the work that we do, and the fact that we are independent and that we take, we don't take ads, and that means that I get to really spend my time talking to amazing people, and hearing about their lives, and it's a wonderful place to be.
No, I love the work that you guys do, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again. Keep us up to date on what you're doing, what stories you're covering, and how we reclaim and reunionize the working class of this country. Mel Buer, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff, Mel Buer. She is an associate editor there at the Real News Network, therealnews.com, the website. We'll get links out on social media. How you can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1893. That was the day that Eugene V. Debs founded the American Railway Union. The goal of the union was to organize railroad workers from different job classifications. Previous railroad unions had been based on job type. Coordinating solidarity between the multiple unions proved difficult. The lack of solidarity hurt railroad organizing. The American Railway Union was open to all white union railway workers up to the job of foreman. This new approach to organizing paid off quickly. In the spring of 1894, the union won a strike against the Great Northern Railroad. The Great Northern Railroad had arbitrarily reduced the workers' wages. When the railroad agreed to go to arbitration to settle the strike, it was seen as a great union victory. Railroad owners were notorious for their anti-union stances. The American Railway Union had not only stood up to the railroad, they had won. In less than a year, more than 450 locals had joined the American Railway Union. Nearly 150,000 workers became members. This made Debs' organization one of the largest unions in the country. But as quickly as it rose, it also rapidly declined. The mid-1890s marked one of the greatest economic downturns in U.S. history prior to the Great Depression. In 1884, the union organized a boycott against George Pullman. Pullman was the founder of the Pullman Palace Car Company. He had slashed his workers' wages while not reducing rents in his company town. A federal judge issued an injunction barring Debs and other leaders from coordinating the boycott. President Grover Cleveland ordered federal troops to get the trains running again. During the 6 months Debs was imprisoned for supporting his members, the American Railway Union was crushed. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind. Email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So Bernie Sanders, I got to tell you, love Bernie Sanders. In fact, I say this all the time. First guy I ever interviewed back in 2005 when we jumped into this radio gig. He was one of the first people that I wanted to talk to and was the first person that I interviewed on my own, and I'm glad. This is a guy who has been a champion for working people, and now as head of a very powerful committee to make sure that working people have a voice. He is doing the work that needs to be done. In fact, as head of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, he has now alerted Amazon that there's an investigation. They're going to be looking into what Sanders says is Amazon's abysmal safety record and basically going to scrutinize the labor practices of the company, pointing out that, they're the most profitable, the biggest, most valuable company in the country. They should be the safest, not the most dangerous. And as he points out, the company conditions in the warehouse, he says, are dangerous and illegal. He says the warehouses are uniquely dangerous due to the physically demanding nature of the work and the production levels. This is one of those things that, You're constantly wearing things barking at you. You got to pick up a package every couple of seconds. It's constant surveillance, constant, cracking the whip. And technology has done this. And it's not just going to be Amazon workers now. And this is the reason everyone should care. It's them now. Eventually, it's going to be everyone. And this is where we're saying, what kind of environment should people work in? Now, I've said from the beginning, Amazon should be unionized. Workers should be forming unions right now to fight back against all this instead of just taking it. And I know, we're just happy to have a job, because they put them in places where, reasonable jobs are hard to find. And, we've talked to workers over the last several years who've said, look, the factory came in, the warehouse came in, this industry came in, and we were grateful for the work. And then they just chewed up every working person and spit them out the other side. And this is basically what's being accused by Senator Sanders, and why this investigation. Now, the interesting thing about this that I did not know is, and I shouldn't be surprised by it, and I'm not surprised by it, but evidently Amazon has its own kind of in-house clinic, in-house healthcare kind of thing. And you go, well, it sounds like a good company, want to take care of their employees. And that's how they frame it. But it's also on how they keep injuries down. It's also how they underreport, according to Senator Sanders, and something that they are going to look into, the undertreating and underreporting of employee industry injuries because of this. You got to go to the company doctor. It's almost like we're recreating the company town again, isn't it? Because if you can't call off sick, got to come into the company doctor. So I'm glad to see Senator Sanders is taking a look at this, as we should. At the end of the day, I'm still somebody who believes, in the workplace, every worker should have that voice, that security. And if you can't, this is where laws have to step in. And to show you just how pathetically weak they are, Amazon has had a higher than average injury rate across warehouse sectors for a while now. In fact, I think it's the Strategic Organizing Committee. They've done some extensive reporting on this. And it's in large part because it's cracking the whip. We got productivity gains to make. We got to make up we're on a mission. And that mission is not supporting your family and that the mission is customer driven. That's their thing. And while I understand to a degree, it's still about being able to go home at the end of the night. So we're in this moment where, I look at today's, stories that I talked about earlier. The fact that Pennsylvania passed a minimum wage law in the House that isn't going to pass the Senate. And you've got people who are saying, no, 725 is just fine. You got people saying, no, we can't infringe on the warehouse space. When do we start demanding better? Now, look, we spent a lot of time today talking about Trump and the insanity that comes out of that. We spent a lot of time talking about the Hunter Bidens and all of the divisive stuff, all of the stuff that's supposed to be out there to keep us on edge and get people engaged and calling into talk shows and that. But seriously, when you look at the economy as a whole, when you look at the fact that people are working longer and harder and struggling to make ends meet, and you do have this sense of tension, this real world anger, how do we turn that around? And as I've been saying for the longest time, I think it starts in the workplace. It starts with empowering people to demand better. I'm going to be interested to see what Senator Sanders in this investigation comes out as. I'm going to be interested to see where they pursue this, because ultimately they are the leader in the race to the bottom. They are the ones who are going to set the tone for all of the other warehouse jobs, all of the other similar kind of employment. And if they aren't the model of positivity, if they aren't the model of, see, it used to be union jobs used to be that gold standard. This is how we do things. And everybody worked to get to that. We've flipped this whole model up on its end, and now it's who's the worst actor and how can we emulate the worst of their behavior. So good on Senator Sanders. I hope the committee will look into this, and I am looking forward to seeing how this plays out. And if you missed any of today's program, grab the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You'll find ours. If you got questions, comments, something on your mind, something I said got under your skin, made you think, made you angry, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people